The moment I walked into my house and saw her standing there with my husband, I knew my life was over. My legs turned to jelly. The sight before me, so unexpected, so wrong, froze me in place. Kelechi, my husband of 8 years, was sitting on the couch, smiling at Cynthia, our househelp, like she was more than just a girl who cleaned our floors. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. How had it come to this? I had always believed in the good in people, especially those I allowed into my home. But Cynthia, she was different. She had been with us for only 2 months, but in that time, she'd warmed her way into our lives, into my husband's attention. It started small. At first, it seemed harmless. The extra praise Kelechi gave her for making the house spotless. The way she'd laugh a little too long at his jokes. But today, something was different. I'm sorry, I stammered, my voice barely a whisper, feeling small in my own home. I looked at Kelechi, hoping, praying that there was some reasonable explanation. He straightened up, quickly wiping the smile off his face as if he'd been caught doing something wrong. "Tari, you're home early," he said, his voice strained, like he was trying too hard to sound casual. But I wasn't fooled. My gaze shifted to Cynthia, standing in the corner, eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. She wasn't sorry. No, she was enjoying this. I saw it in the way she held her posture, the way her lips were slightly curled in a smirk. My blood boiled, but I kept my voice steady, forcing myself to ask the question that had been building in my chest. "What's going on here, Kelechi?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, he looked at me, eyes darting around the room as though searching for the right words. "It's not what you think. We were just..." "Just what?" My voice cracked. "Just what, Kelechi? Because this show doesn't look like just anything to me." "What exactly is happening between you two?" Cynthia, who had been silent up until now, stepped forward. "Tari," she said in a soft voice, her eyes glistening with an emotion I couldn't understand. "Kelechi and we've become close." The words hit me like a slap to the face. My hands trembled. My world felt like it was crashing down around me. I had trusted this girl, let her into our home, into our family, and now, this. "I never wanted to hurt you," Kelechi said, looking more ashamed than I had ever seen him. But his eyes were filled with guilt that seemed too familiar. It wasn't the kind of guilt a man has for making a small mistake. No, this was something deeper, something more profound. I looked at him, the man I had built my life with, and I realized, in that moment, that I didn't know him at all. "So, what is it, Kelechi? What exactly is this thing between you two?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I could see it now, the way Cynthia's presence had started to dominate his life. And what hurt the most was that I had allowed it to happen. I had been so busy, so trusting, that I hadn't even noticed the shift, the way my husband had slowly drifted away from me. The truth, raw and bitter, started to settle in. This wasn't some innocent mistake. This wasn't just a slip-up. This was betrayal. I couldn't take it. I turned and walked out of the living room, out of the house. The sound of my own heartbeat in my ears drowned out everything else. I could feel the tears pricking at my eyes, but I fought them back, determined not to let him see me break. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of them making sense. Kelechi's words echoed in my head like a broken record. "It's not what you think. We were just close." I couldn't believe what he had said. He'd betrayed me. The man I had shared my life with, the father of my children, had crossed a line I could never come back from. At first, I tried to push it all away. I told myself, it's just a mistake. He's not in love with her. He was just lonely. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the truth. No. Kelechi had fallen for her. And what stung the most was that he hadn't even tried to hide it. The next morning, everything felt different. The house felt emptier, even though it was full of people. The walls seemed to press in on me, suffocating me with their silence. I tried to act normal, tried to make breakfast for the kids, but my hands shook as I poured the tea. And then, as if it was some cruel joke, Cynthia came into the kitchen, humming softly, as if she had every right to be there. She looked at me with those innocent eyes, like nothing had changed, like she hadn't just shattered my world. "Tari," she said, her voice sweet as honey, "good morning. Is everything okay?" The words almost choked me. How could she ask me that? Is everything okay? Nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. I forced a smile, trying to keep the tears at bay. "Yes, everything's fine," I lied, my voice trembling. "Just tired." She gave me a sympathetic look, but I saw the glint in her eyes, the little spark of triumph hidden behind that mask of innocence. She knew exactly what she was doing. She had wormed her way into Kelechi's heart, and now she was playing the victim, acting like she had no idea what had transpired between them. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip her out of my house, throw her out into the streets, and never see her again. But I didn't. Because that's not who I was. That's not who I had ever been. Instead, I stayed quiet, too afraid to confront Kelechi again. I couldn't do it. My heart was already broken, and I didn't think I could take any more of his lies. He had promised me the world, promised me he would never hurt me, but now, I was the one who was being torn apart. Later that evening, I couldn't sit still any longer. I had to know. I had to hear it from him, directly from his lips. So, I called Kelechi's phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed his number. He picked up on the first ring. "Tari," he said, his voice sounding strained, as though he knew what was coming. "I need to see you," I said, my voice flat, empty. "I can't do this anymore, Kelechi. I can't live in this lie." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear him breathing, could almost feel the weight of the guilt hanging over him. Finally, he spoke. "I'll come home early tonight. We'll talk." When Kelechi came home that night, he found me sitting in the living room, staring out the window. I couldn't look at him, not after everything that had happened. Not after he had chosen her over me. The woman who had once been my house help was now his lover. The thought made me sick. He stood in the doorway, unsure of what to do. "Tari," he said, his voice softer than I expected. "Please, just let me explain." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was too hurt, too angry, too betrayed. All I could do was sit there in silence. Finally, Kelechi sat down next to me. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "You don't get to touch me," I whispered, my voice hoarse with emotion. "Not after what you've done." He looked at me, his eyes filled with regret. "I never wanted to hurt you. I swear, Tari, it just happened." "Cynthia, she what, Kelechi?" I interrupted, turning to face him. "She seduced you? Or did you just decide one day that I wasn't enough for you anymore?" He looked down at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. I could see the shame in his posture, in the way he curled in on himself. It was clear he was battling with himself. But it didn't matter. Nothing would make up for the betrayal. "I never meant to hurt you," he said again, his voice shaking. "But I can't change what's happened. I can't take it back." The truth was out now. The ugly, painful truth. Kelechi was in love with Cynthia. He had made a choice, and it wasn't me. And no matter how much he regretted it, that was something I couldn't undo. "I want you to leave," I said, my voice breaking. I want you to leave this house. You and Cynthia. Go and be with her. The look of shock on his face was almost too much to bear. But I had to do this. I had to take control. If I didn't, I'd lose myself. Kelechi stood up, his hands trembling. He looked at me one last time, as if he was hoping for some sign that things could be fixed. But I didn't give him that. I couldn't. His actions had destroyed everything we had, and now, there was no going back. I'll pack my things, he said quietly. He didn't try to argue, didn't try to apologize again. He knew it was too late for that. As I heard him moving around upstairs, packing his bags, I realized something. I had spent years thinking that I needed him. I had spent so much time building my life around him. But in that moment, I realized that I had been strong all along. I didn't need him to be happy. I didn't need anyone who would hurt me like this. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. This was the moment I had to be strong. For me. For my children. I was finally free. Free from the lies, free from the betrayal. And I would never let anyone, not even Kelechi, take that away from me again. The house felt colder without him. It was a strange feeling, empty, yet somehow quieter, as if the air itself had become still, holding its breath. Kelechi had packed his bags and left, but his absence was deafening. I kept myself busy, distracting myself with the children, doing everything I could to fill the silence. But no matter how hard I tried, the ache in my chest wouldn't go away. I had made the right decision. I had walked away from a man who didn't respect me, a man who had broken our vows. But the weight of that decision was heavier than I could have imagined. I'd never known heartbreak like this. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the feeling of being replaced. The thought that Cynthia had taken my place in Kelechi's heart made my stomach turn. I couldn't escape it. Every corner of this house reminded me of him, of the love we used to share. But now, that love seemed like a distant memory, a lie I had convinced myself was real. It was late one evening when my phone rang. I looked at the screen, seeing Kelechi's name flash across it. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to hear his voice again, to hear more of his empty apologies. But the phone rang again. And then again. I let it ring through, the sound almost unbearable in the quiet of the night. Finally, after the fifth ring, I picked it up. "What do you want, Kelechi?" I asked, my voice flat, as though I had no more emotions left to give. "Tari, please, just listen to me," he said, his voice strained. "I know I've hurt you. I know what I've done is unforgivable. But I need you to know that Cynthia, she's not who I thought she was." I clenched the phone tighter. "What do you mean, not who you thought she was? Kelechi, are you serious right now? After everything, you're telling me she's the victim?" "I'm not saying that," he said, a desperate edge in his voice. "But things have gotten complicated. She's not who I thought she was. She..." "Stop," I cut him off, my pulse quickening. "I don't want to hear any more excuses. You've made your choice. You've chosen her. I'm done, Kelechi." "Tari, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "I need you to believe me. It's not what it looks like. I made a mistake, but I'm not in love with her, at least, not the way you think I am." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end for us. But the truth was already clear in my heart. He had made his choice, and I wasn't a part of it anymore. "I need to go," I said, my voice breaking despite my effort to stay strong. I hung up the phone, not waiting for him to say another word. The next few days passed in a blur. Kelechi called again, and each time, I refused to answer. My mind raced with questions, but my heart had already made its decision. I couldn't go back. Not now. Not after everything. But then, one morning, as I was going through the bills, something caught my eye. It was a receipt, Kelechi's receipt from a restaurant. It was from the night he had said he was working late. The receipt was for 2 people. One of them was his name. The other was for Cynthia. I felt a cold chill wash over me as I stared at the paper. The same paper that Kelechi had tried so hard to hide, to convince me that nothing had happened. But now, it was all too clear. My hands shook as I dropped the receipt on the table. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Kelechi hadn't just been with Cynthia. He had been hiding this from me. He had been living a lie right under my nose. I couldn't let this go. I had to confront Cynthia. I had to hear the truth from her, even if it broke me even more. So, I called her. When she answered, I was shocked at how calm her voice sounded. "Tari," she said, as if everything was normal. "How are you?" "How am I?" I repeated bitterly. "You know, I don't know how to feel anymore, Cynthia. How could you do this to me? How could you steal my husband from me?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Cynthia spoke. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, but her words felt hollow. I fell in love with him. It wasn't planned. It just happened." "You think this is something that just happens?" I snapped. "You think it's okay to take what isn't yours? You've destroyed my family, Cynthia. And for what? To feel special. To feel like someone wanted you." There was silence for a long time. Finally, Cynthia spoke again, but this time her voice was different. "I didn't want to hurt you, Tari. But Kelechi, he loves me. He doesn't love you anymore." The finality in her words hit me like a slap. It was true. Kelechi had chosen her. He had walked away from everything we had built together. And there was no coming back from that. "Goodbye, Cynthia," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm done." As the days passed, the pain didn't go away. I had made the right decision. I knew I had. But that didn't make it any easier. I spent nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Kelechi. About us. About the life we had planned. How had it all gone wrong? But one thing was clear, I had to keep going. I had to keep moving forward, no matter how hard it felt. For me. For my children. For my dignity. The house felt more like a prison than a home. Every corner reminded me of the life I had lost, the love I had trusted, and the betrayal that had shattered everything. But it wasn't just the house. It was me. I had been broken, but I was still here. Still breathing. And breathing was the first step. I had spent weeks in silence, drowning in my pain, unable to find the strength to move forward. The days had blurred together, lonely, empty. But something inside me shifted. The anger that had consumed me slowly turned into something else, something stronger. I couldn't stay like this forever. I couldn't stay stuck in the past, in the memories of a man who had chosen someone else over me. I deserved more than that. One morning, as I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at the reflection of the woman I had become, I knew it was time to let go. It was time to stop letting Kelechi's betrayal define me. I wasn't just someone's wife. I wasn't just a victim of his actions. I was Tari, a woman with her own strength, her own voice. And I was going to reclaim that. I took a deep breath and looked at myself. I had to do something. I had to start rebuilding my life, piece by piece. It wasn't going to be easy. But nothing worth having ever is. It started with the small things. The things I had neglected in the chaos of the last few months. I signed the children up for new activities. I began working out again, the rhythm of my movements reminding me that I was still capable of control. I even went out with some old friends, laughing like I hadn't laughed in years. But the real change came when I finally let go of the anger. It didn't happen all at once. Some days, I felt like I was moving forward, and other days, it felt like I was back at square one. But every little victory felt like a step towards something better. Something new. One day, as I was at the local grocery store, trying to navigate the crowded aisles with my children, I bumped into someone I hadn't expected, Kemi, one of my old friends. We had lost touch after I got married and had kids, but now, there she was, standing in front of me with a big smile. Tari. Oh my God, it's been forever, she exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug. I felt a rush of warmth and relief flood through me. It had been so long since I had seen someone who truly cared about me. Someone who knew me before the house, before the marriage, before all of this. We stood there for a while, catching up. She could see the change in me immediately. She could tell that something had happened, something had broken me, but now, there was something new in my eyes. A strength that hadn't been there before. You look amazing, she said, her eyes soft with concern. I've been worried about you, Tari. You've been through so much, but you look like you're finally coming out of it. I'm trying, I said, my voice steady, but I could feel the lump in my throat. It's been hard, Kemi. I'm not going to lie. But I'm getting there. We exchanged numbers, and that was the start of a new chapter. Kemi offered me her support without question. She didn't judge me for what had happened. She simply showed up and reminded me that I wasn't alone. A few weeks later, after one of our late-night chats, Kemi dropped a bombshell on me. I had confided in her about Kelechi's betrayal, how devastated I had been, how much I had struggled to find the strength to move on. She listened, offering comfort, but then, she asked a question that made me freeze. Tari, have you ever wondered why Cynthia was really hired in the first place? I blinked, confused. What do you mean? I mean, think about it. She was young, beautiful, and came highly recommended. You were going through a busy time with your work, and Kelechi was traveling a lot. It all just fell into place, right? But don't you think that maybe Kelechi was looking for something more than just a house help? I stared at Kemi, my mind racing. She was right. I had never really questioned the timing. I had been so caught up in the idea of keeping everything together that I hadn't stopped to ask why Kelechi had pushed so hard for Cynthia to be the one we had. Kemi continued, her voice quiet. What if he planned it from the beginning? What if he was using her to get close to you? It's possible, you know. Some people are manipulative. They play the long game. I felt sick to my stomach. I had trusted Kelechi. I had thought he was the one person who would never hurt me. And yet, here I was, questioning everything. The betrayal wasn't just about what had happened, it was about everything I had missed, everything I had ignored. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of Kemi's words pressing down on me. I thought about how much I had given to Kelechi, how much I had sacrificed for him. But now, I was starting to see things for what they really were. The next morning, as I stood in the kitchen, making breakfast for the kids, I made a promise to myself. I would let go of the past. I would stop wondering why Kelechi did what he did. I would stop blaming myself for not seeing it sooner. It was over. And it was time for me to move on. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to live again. The days were getting brighter. Every morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose, a determination I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving. It was about proving to myself that I was stronger than the betrayal, stronger than the heartbreak. And every day, I felt the weight lifting off my shoulders. One afternoon, while I was doing the usual chores around the house, my phone rang. It was Kemi. "Tari, I have an idea," she said, her voice laced with excitement. "I know you've been struggling, but I think I found something that could really help you." I leaned against the counter, curious. "What's that?" "I've been talking to my boss, and they are looking for someone with your skills. It's a part-time position as an office assistant. It's not much at first, but it'll get you back on your feet. And you'll be in a professional environment, meeting new people. What do you think?" For a moment, I felt hesitant. A part of me was still afraid of failure, afraid of walking out into the world on my own. But another part of me knew this was exactly what I needed. I took a deep breath. "Yes. I'll do it." It was a small step, but it felt like a giant leap forward. I wasn't just a housewife anymore. I wasn't just a woman broken by betrayal. I was a woman with a future again. A few days after I accepted the job, Kelechi called again. I had been avoiding him, but I knew the day would come when I couldn't hide anymore. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. "Tari," Kelechi's voice came through, low and tired. "I know you're angry with me, and I don't blame you. But I need you to understand something. I never wanted to hurt you." I closed my eyes, the familiar ache settling in my chest. "Kelechi, I don't want to hear it. I don't want your apologies anymore. They don't mean anything. You've done what you've done, and I've made my choice." There was silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing heavily, as though trying to find the right words. But there were no words left. Nothing he said could undo the damage he had caused. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I truly am. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope someday you will." The truth was, I didn't know if I would ever forgive him. What he had done went beyond a mistake. It was a betrayal that had cut me to my core. But I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't crying anymore. I was just done. The pain was fading, and with it, so was the hold he had over me. "I've already forgiven myself, Kelechi," I said, my voice steady. "And that's enough for me. Goodbye." I hung up the phone, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. I had let go of the past. I had let go of the man who had once been everything to me, and now, I was free. As the weeks went by, I settled into my new routine. My job was challenging but fulfilling. I made new friends at work, people who saw me for who I truly was, not just as a wife or mother, but as an individual. It felt good to be valued again, to be seen as more than just a woman who had been betrayed. One evening, after work, I met up with Kemi for a coffee. She had been my rock through all of this, and I owed her so much. I could never thank her enough for showing up when I needed her the most. "You know, I'm proud of you, Tari," Kemi said, smiling warmly across the table. "You've come a long way. You've found your strength again." I smiled back, feeling the weight of her words. "I'm just starting to realize that I've always had it in me. It just took a broken heart to bring it out." One evening, as I sat on the balcony of my apartment, sipping tea and watching the sunset, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. My life was no longer defined by Kelechi's betrayal. It was defined by my choices, my strength, and my determination to move forward. The kids were playing in the living room, and I could hear their laughter that sounded like music to my ears. They were growing up in a home filled with love and respect, not the tension that had once ruled our lives. And then, as I sat there, something unexpected happened. I realized I wasn't just okay. I was more than okay. I was better. I was stronger than I had ever been before. The next day, I received a call from the office. I had been promoted to a full-time position. The manager had been impressed with my work and my commitment, and they wanted me to take on more responsibility. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of excitement, of pride in what I had accomplished. It wasn't just about the promotion, it was about the journey I had taken to get here. It was about reclaiming my life, piece by piece. I hung up the phone and stood in front of the mirror, looking at the woman who had come so far. A woman who had loved deeply, been hurt terribly, but who had refused to let that pain define her. I smiled at my reflection. "You've made it," I whispered to myself. "You've really made it." I wasn't sure what the future held. I didn't know where my journey would take me, but for the first time, I felt hopeful. I was ready to take on whatever came next. I had faced my darkest days, and now, I was stepping into the light. I had found my strength. I had found myself. And no one, could take that away from me. I had come so far, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. I had rebuilt my life, step by step, and I had found strength in places I never thought possible. But there was a part of me that still wondered if I was truly free. Kelechi's absence didn't hurt as much as it used to. The kids were doing well, thriving in the new routine we had built. But every so often, I would feel the sting of his betrayal, that sharp reminder of the love I had lost. It wasn't something I could forget so easily. Despite everything, despite the progress I had made, the world still seemed to question me. At work, there were whispers. A few colleagues raised eyebrows when they learned I had gone through a divorce. They didn't know the full story, but that didn't stop their judgment. In the break room, I overheard one of the women say, "She's the one who couldn't keep her husband. Who knows what kind of woman she is?" I clenched my jaw, the old pain rising again. I had worked so hard to build a life without Kelechi, to show my kids that we were strong, but sometimes the world had a way of reminding you of your past. One morning, while I was preparing breakfast for the kids, my phone rang. It was from work. I picked it up, still in my apron, trying to keep everything in order. "Hello, Tari." The voice on the other end was that of my boss, Mr. Adebayo. "We've received some complaints about your performance. It's been noticed that you've been distracted lately. Is everything alright?" I froze, the knife in my hand pausing mid-chop. My heart sank. Had I really been distracted? Was I not doing enough? The guilt hit me immediately, the sense of failure creeping up on me. I wasn't just dealing with my own issues, I was now responsible for my children's future. I had to make this work. I couldn't afford to slip up. "Yes, everything's fine, sir," I said, forcing my voice to sound steady. "I apologize if I've been off track. I'll make sure to refocus and give my best. You're a strong asset to the team, Tari. But we need to see that you're fully present. Take the weekend, regroup, and come back ready to give it your all. We believe in you." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you again." The moment I hung up the phone, a wave of frustration hit me. Here I was, trying so hard to keep it all together, and yet, no matter what I did, there was always something reminding me that I wasn't enough. It was overwhelming. And I felt the pressure building. That evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet, but the silence felt suffocating. I hadn't had a moment to myself in so long. I had been pushing through, one task after another, but tonight, I couldn't shake the feeling of exhaustion. I reached for the bottle of wine I had tucked away in the cabinet. "Just a glass," I told myself. "Just one glass to take the edge off." I poured it, watching the red liquid swirl in the glass, the deep color reminding me of the days when Kelechi would pour me a drink after a long day. We would sit, talk about our dreams, and laugh together. But that was a lifetime ago. I took a sip, the bitterness spreading across my tongue. It wasn't the escape I thought it would be. It never was. The truth still lingered, gnawing at me. I was alone now, and even though I had gained so much, there were moments when it felt like too much to carry. The next day, I took Kemi's advice and decided to get out of the house. I had been isolating myself too much, letting my fears and insecurities control me. I needed to reconnect with the world. I went to a cafe near my office, one I hadn't visited in months. The place was small but cozy, with soft jazz music playing in the background and the rich aroma of coffee filling the air. I was lost in thought when I heard a familiar voice. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up and saw Samuel, a man I had known from work, standing in front of me. He had been a quiet but kind presence in the office. His eyes were soft, not like the judgmental looks I often received. "Samuel," I said, surprised. "No, it's not. Please, sit." He smiled and sat down, his presence oddly comforting. We exchanged pleasantries, talking about work, the kids, and life in general. It felt good to talk to someone who wasn't trying to tear me down or judge me. For the first time in a while, I didn't feel so alone. "You know," Samuel said, after a pause, "I've always respected you, Tari. You've handled everything with such grace. I've seen what you've gone through, and I just want you to know that you're doing amazing." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Thank you. I don't always feel amazing, but I'm trying." "You don't have to do it all alone, you know," Samuel said, his voice gentle. "You've got people who care about you. Don't forget that." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. He was right. I didn't have to carry everything on my own. I had Kemi. I had my children. I had people who saw me for who I truly was. And that was enough. Over the next few weeks, things started to shift. I began focusing more on my work, making sure to leave my personal life at the door when I walked into the office. I found a new rhythm, balancing my role as a mother, employee, and woman. Kemi was always there for support, reminding me that I wasn't a failure. I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to keep moving forward. One day, as I was getting ready for a meeting at work, I looked in the mirror and realized something. I was no longer the woman who had been devastated by Kelechi's betrayal. I was no longer the woman who cried herself to sleep every night. I was stronger now. I was ready to take on the world. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room. I felt different today, lighter, almost like I was standing at the edge of something new. It had been 6 months since I had walked away from Kelechi, and though there were still moments of doubt, the weight on my shoulders wasn't as heavy. I had faced the storm, and now, I was standing on solid ground. But there was a part of me, a small but persistent part, that wondered if I was truly done with the past. If I had really let go of everything, or if some part of me was still holding on. I was sitting at my desk at work, going over some paperwork, when my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was from Kelechi. My heart skipped a beat. It had been weeks since I had heard from him. My first instinct was to ignore it, to block him out once and for all. But something stopped me. I opened the message. "Tari, I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I can't stop regretting the way I treated you. Please, can we talk?" I stared at the words for a long time, my mind racing. A million thoughts flooded my head: anger, confusion, fear. How could he think he could just come back into my life after everything he had done? But as I read his message again, something in me softened. There was a raw honesty in his words that I hadn't heard before. I quickly typed back. "What do you want, Kelechi?" The reply came almost instantly. "I just need a chance to explain. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. But I want to make things right, for what it's worth." I closed my eyes. A part of me wanted to yell at him, to demand answers. But another part of me wondered if, maybe, it was time to face the past. If I could finally put an end to it, for good. That afternoon, I agreed to meet him at a cafe. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for, but I knew I couldn't keep running from this forever. I had rebuilt my life, and I was strong, but there was a part of me that wanted closure, that needed to hear his side of the story. When I walked into the cafe, I saw him sitting at a table near the window. He looked different, distant, older, like he had aged years in the months since we last spoke. His once confident posture was now hunched, and his eyes were filled with regret. "Hi," he said quietly when he saw me. His voice was strained, as though the weight of everything he had done was finally catching up to him. I nodded, sitting down across from him. The silence between us was thick, heavy with unspoken words. "I didn't think you'd actually agree to meet me," Kelechi said, breaking the silence. "I can't even begin to tell you how sorry I am, Tari. I don't expect you to believe me, but I've been doing a lot of thinking. And I know now that I made the biggest mistake of my life." I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at him, waiting for him to continue. He had hurt me more than anyone ever had, but I wasn't here to get revenge. I wasn't here to make him suffer the way he had made me suffer. I was here for something else, something I hadn't realized I needed until this moment. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I need you to understand something," he said, his voice shaking. "Cynthia, she wasn't the one. I thought she was. But she wasn't. I was just running away from what I had with you, our family, our life. I was a coward." I looked down at my hands, my heart heavy. I had heard his apologies before, but something was different this time. The desperation in his voice, the pain in his eyes, it felt real. "You didn't just betray me, Kelechi," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You betrayed our children. You broke our family. You broke me." "I know," he whispered. "I'll live with that for the rest of my life. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to know that I'll never stop being sorry for what I did." I was silent for a long time, the words swirling in my mind. I had spent so many sleepless nights trying to understand why he did it, trying to make sense of the mess he had left behind. But now, in this moment, I realized something important. I didn't need to understand it. I didn't need to know why he did what he did. What mattered was that I had survived it. I had moved on, rebuilt my life, and found strength in places I never knew existed. And no matter how many times he apologized, that couldn't change the fact that I was stronger without him. "Thank you for your apology, Kelechi," I said finally, meeting his gaze. "But I'm not the same person I was. I've learned to live without you. And I'm okay with that." The meeting ended quietly, and I walked out of the cafe feeling lighter than I had in months. Kelechi's apology, while sincere, wasn't enough to undo the damage he had caused. But it wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. I had forgiven him, not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I deserved to be free of the anger, the sadness, and the regret. I had already taken the first steps toward healing when I walked away from him. Today, I had taken another step toward truly letting go. As I walked home, I realized that the woman I had become was nothing like the woman I had been. I had reclaimed my strength, my identity, and my future. The past was still there, but it no longer had power over me.
Thank you so much for watching my video to the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please comment below for suggestions, corrections, or a plus. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel, this will encourage us to do more. Please subscribe to Folktale by Zillion for more interesting stories.